Begin Self-Publishing, episode 137. Social Media Networking Book Release.
Interested in self-publishing but don't know where to start? Want to get your book onto Amazon? Want to hold your paperback book in your hands? Learn how on the Begin Self-Publishing podcast with your host, Tim Lewis.
I'm taking a break from the tutorial series, mainly because, I have to, really. Even though I have actually seen Jen Colt in person very recently, we didn't have a chance to actually record an interview out in the Midwest about her book plan, which I've actually now seen, but we're going to record that in a week or so. So, given that there's a little hiatus in the tutorial series, I thought I would talk about my recent book release for my new book, Social Media Networking. It's been a while since I've released a book, and I've never ever released a non-fiction book before, or a book like this where there's a whole compendium of people involved in the book project. So to recap, and I think I mentioned this in previous podcasts, but this is a book about how people have used social media to get ahead in their careers, in their romantic life, to improve their travel experience, and also to get speaking gigs and find other business opportunities. So I've interviewed like 20 people about various stories that they've had in terms of how they've used social media to make improvements in one of these areas. Now, as you may recall, the original idea was that I was going to create an audiobook first for this project. So all of the interviews were recorded as audio interviews first. I edited them. Now, the big problem with the audiobook idea was simply that a lot of the audio quality wasn't really good enough. I'm fairly sure that certainly some interviews, like there was one where I interviewed Chris Drubb, who's a very talented American guy who works with non-profits. But he was driving his car in Canada at the time, so as you can understand, the original audio was a bit patchy, to say the least. My understanding is that Audible doesn't really like poor audio quality, so I couldn't really do the project the way I wanted to do it to begin with. So eventually I just got everything transcribed, and it was a bit of a rush, but I did get the book done. So there's my commentary at the beginning and my commentary at the end, involving my lessons learned from the interviews, and also the text of the best parts of the interviews. So I asked everybody 4 questions. Some people could answer some questions, some couldn't others. And then I took their best answer, and that's included in the book. So the audiobook first policy, I think, could work if you're recording the audio yourself professionally. So I'm still going to go back to the podcast series that I've done here and try and create an audiobook from that, because I think it's good enough audio quality that it will pass Audible's tests. Now, if I was going to do this kind of aggregated interview book again, I would spend a lot more time enforcing where people actually answer the questions. So I would try and insist that they treat it like a proper podcast interview so I could get as good audio quality as possible. Because some of the interviews are of that standard, but some have got issues with people laughing in the background, or dogs barking, or car noise. And I think if you want to do an audiobook first book involving other people, then you need really to know and to plan that right at the beginning of the book, which I kind of had the idea, but I didn't really enforce it the way I should have done. What other lessons have I learnt in terms of launching a non-fiction book? Well, the second lesson was that you need to really plan your promotion of this kind of book, because I was so rushed in terms of getting the book finished that I didn't really give enough time between when I finished the book and when the actual promotion for the book was going to take place. I wanted ideally to synchronize all of the 20 people who were involved in the book and their promotion of the book with my own promotion, and in the end, that didn't really happen. I told everybody to promote it on a particular day, but I only told that a few days ahead. Some people didn't get the message in time. Some people didn't understand. And I think if I was doing this kind of project again, I would be basically weeks ahead telling people, like, on this particular day, and I'd pick a significant day, so like the 1st of October or something like that, and just basically not just do it a few days ahead and say, like, can you promote on this day? But literally weeks ahead, I'll keep reminding them over and over and over and over and over again to do it on this one particular day. And then I would also synchronise my own promotions on that day as well. But what's kind of happened is that most people kind of did something on the day that I wanted them to, but a lot of people didn't. A lot of people did it a day later. Some people didn't do anything, and it didn't quite work as well as I intended. Though I did manage to become a #1 Amazon bestseller, but that's a whole nother story, which I'll talk about in a minute. Some other innovations that I took to using in this project was that I used the cover creator in what is now KDP Print. I actually used KDP Print for the first time. So rather than using CreateSpace, because it's now closed down, I use KDP Print. But previously I've got the covers custom designed by a designer. So both the front, the spine and the back of the book created by a designer. This time I was too cheap to do that. So I used Amazon's cover creator process and pasted in the ebook cover and the front, and I entered the text on the back myself. And that seems to work reasonably well. You can tell the difference between a book where somebody has designed the whole thing. But on the other hand, the cover creator creates fairly good quality covers, basically. So if you haven't got the money for paying for somebody to do the whole thing, then I think the cover creator can be quite a good program to use. And that's built into the KDP Print interface. The other innovation was I used the program Vellum for the first time, using the Mac in a Box solution that Paul Teague suggests. Now, to begin with, for the first day or so, I was really cursing Vellum with abandon. And I even emailed them to say, look, I may have to ask for my money back. And the reason for this is that Vellum is very kind of opinionated in the books that it wants. And it expects a certain structure. So it likes basically chapters in a book. And you can have sections in your book, but my book had sections within sections. And that kind of broke Vellum, and it made it very hard to actually get it to work properly. Now, eventually Vellum support came back and said that they've got a volumes feature. So if you're creating a box set, then that box set can have sections within sections in effect. So that's how I created the book in the end in Vellum. And once I've got it working, it's actually a very good program, Vellum. I can see why people rave about it. But just be aware, if you're creating a non-fiction book with sections in sections, then you may have issues. Certainly if you've got sections in sections in sections in sections, then I think you're going to struggle to get Vellum to work for you, because it's very much my way or the highway with how Vellum creates the books. It will produce you beautiful books, but on the other hand, if your book has got a particularly peculiar structure, then it may not work quite the way you expect it to. But I'm actually very happy with Vellum in terms of the output it's created. Now, coming back to the categories and the fact that I'm now a #1 Amazon bestseller, I got in touch with Alex Newton, who's been on the show before, K-Lytics, and I kind of said, well, can you tell me some categories I could put this book into? And I have put the book into most of the categories he suggested. But one rather cheeky category that I put the book into was Travel United States, Kansas. And the reason for this is that there was one chapter in my book where I talk about my trip to Wichita, which incidentally as well I've been just back from. And I did think long and hard about, should I put this book in this category? Because it kind of applies, but it's a side thing for the book. But in the end, I decided to do it. And the reason I decided to do it is that I've just got so fed up with people who have sold like 4 books in a very easy category, saying that they're a self-publishing guru. And there's me, and I have been like in top 10 of really hard categories to get into in the past. But I can never say I was a #1 Amazon bestseller because I'd never been #1 in any category. So in the end, I did put my book into the Kansas travel category. And it became #1 because you only need about 3 books to sell. Basically, ebook travel guides don't sell very much. And certainly on a state-by-state basis, they don't sell particularly much. So when I sold about sort of 8 books in a day, I was automatically going to be #1 in that category. So I've got the screenshots to prove that I was number one. The other thing that I've noticed about this book is that, unlike my other books, it sells really well in paperback. People don't generally want the ebook version of this book, they want the paperback. And in terms of hand selling the book, I was able to sell about 17 copies at the Market Ed Live conference in the UK that I went to. Now, it did help that 3 other people who were people I interviewed in the book were there, so that was great in as much as promoting the book. But people were happily buying this book for me for £8 at Market Ed Live conference in Nottingham in the UK. So I think it's the first book that I've ever done that I feel confident of selling to people by hand. And that's quite a different experience for me. And certainly people want the book signed, but I'm happy to do that. So that's an interesting difference in this non-fiction book as opposed to the fiction books that I've written, where generally speaking, I couldn't really sell the books by hand, but I could sell them, I could give them away. So that's an interesting change. In terms of what the book has accomplished, well, I'm now an Amazon #1 bestseller. I'm at least slightly scamming it. I got a hosting of a Twitter chat out of a result of the book. I've also got a speaking gig at the Cambridge Social Media Day event on the 8th of November in the UK. That wasn't necessarily directly from the book, but I think the book certainly helped in terms of giving me the authority to feel confident enough to go and speak at a major social media event. So, in terms of my objectives, I wasn't necessarily to sell thousands of books, though I would have liked to have done, of course, everybody wants to. But it has given me authority in social media and a foot in the door in terms of social media speaking. So I feel the book has been a success. And certainly I'm now in the stage where there are enough people who've got the book that I can pester on social media to get reviews. And once I can get the reviews, I can look to do things like put in for various book promotion sites. So this is kind of the next phase, so that I'm just going to keep on hammering on about this book and social media until I can get as many people as possible to read it and get the reviews coming in. So I think the book has actually been a success for me, and it's certainly opened my eyes to the possibilities of lots of things. I think you could do an even bigger interview-based book where you have more people, and if you organise the project properly, I think you could get a decent success out of the book. Similarly, it's interesting to me how much, and I've forgotten this because I've clearly been in several books. This is the 7th book I've written. But it interests me to see just how grateful and surprised people are to having appeared in a book. I just love the way that some of the people who are in the book have been showing their friends and families and really promoting the book because they're featured in it. And I forget how magical being in a book is and being mentioned in a book, and just the general experience of having your name shown in a printed book. People just love that. So I would certainly suggest to people that it's not a bad idea to write a kind of compendium book where you're interviewing people, and anybody mentioned in the book will love it. So I think it certainly works as a non-fiction format anyway. So those are my lessons that I learned from the book release process. It's still clearly going on. It's only been out for a couple of weeks now, and I've sold plenty of paperback copies. The ebook sales aren't doing as well as they were, and certainly feel free to go and buy the book. And even more, feel free to leave a review for the book, because those reviews really do matter to me. So I will talk to you guys next time.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please stop by iTunes and rate and leave a review. This helps make the show more visible. For free resources, show notes, and other helpful content, join the community at beginselfpublishing.com.